Hello there, friends. This is going to be a rough run. I'm doing this in one shot. Excuse my chair, it's a little bit noisy, and it will be behind me this entire time, except for when it's not. Now, very recently, as of recording this video, something came across my desk, as you will, I felt like some major importance. So we're going to talk about that today. Grab something to drink, settle in, let's go. Today's topic of import is going to be Louisiana v. Callis, which is the recent Supreme Court case that dealt with the Voting Rights Act and the redistricting specifically in Louisiana, but also has broader impacts beyond that. So let's dig in. So to start this, we're going to start with at the beginning with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which was originally signed into law by President Johnson and really dealt with kind of uprooting a lot of the Jim Crow type laws that existed, especially in the Deep South at the time. In particular, this dealt with, getting rid of poll taxes as well as literacy tests and all the other barriers that were put in place by the Jim Crow laws to prevent people of color and other minorities from being able to vote, especially with as much, or at least with as much prevalence as they are due. As an American citizen, you are given the right to vote and you are encouraged to exercise that right. I encourage you to exercise that right. Use your vote. That is your voice to speak in the political sphere during elections and during important times. Not that you don't have a voice the rest of the time, you obviously do. And that's exactly what this is. This is me using my voice how I see fit. You can do that how you see fit as well. Now, I will add that the original banning of poll taxes, at least it was originally just on the federal level, and that happened in 1964, but that was amended when Virginia's poll tax was deemed unconstitutional and was then added into this bill. All that being said, what we're going to really focus on today is Section 2, because that has the most pertinence, at least from my understanding, to this case. Which, again, speaking in broad general strokes here, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty. I'm not a law person. I just try to understand things, and I'll share that understanding as I have it. And if I say anything incorrectly or there's some nuance that I'm missing, please feel free to correct me. I love to learn more. But anywho, Section 2. Section 2 instituted a nationwide prohibition of the abridgment or denial, i.e. just not allowing people to have the right to vote based on color or race, which obviously we shouldn't prevent people from being able to vote for those things. And for a little bit more context on this, back in 2022, there was another case that was brought to the court that kind of set the grounds for which this current case of Louisiana v. Callis was based on. So this case back in 2022 is Robinson v. Arduin, which dealt with the perceived dilution of black votes in particular within Louisiana and other people of color as well. And they believed this and they saw this because the way the map was laid out and the way the population was dispersed, the map packed essentially all black voters, of the high concentration of black voters into one district, essentially diluting the overall power of in particular black vote in Louisiana, and through a practice that is lovingly known as gerrymandering. But yeah, so on the screen here, you're gonna see a map. So on the left is gonna be the map that was before the case was brought up of Robinson v. Arduin, and on the right is the map that was after. So the plaintiffs won in that case, and they were able to do an emergency session to redistrict the state and gave black voters two districts, it gave black voters a predominant presence in two districts. Now, the second one here on the right is exactly what's being questioned in court, or was overturned in court, I guess, not questioned anymore. They came to the ruling, and it moved up through the court system, and ultimately, in the Supreme Court, was deemed that that this was still racial gerrymandering and was thus overturned. So I'll be curious to see exactly what Louisiana chooses to do with the opportunity to redistrict. Now, and I can understand where, I mean, on both these maps, you can see there's some funky business going on here with how they're drawing them out. You got the one on the left with just the little tiny District 2 right there in the middle, which that's not very good. That's, this is obvious, like they were trying to, you got 6 going all the way around it, and like 1 is split up by 2. It's just a weird map. I guess there's 1 that's not contiguous and the other 2 are weird. Now I'm saying here this too, the map on the right is also a little bit funky. You've got this weird kind of middling district which is District 6, which is the district that was called into question in the Supreme Court as being an unconstitutional use of racial gerrymandering, or gerrymandering based on race, which I think is interesting. And it's one of those things that was, and this is where it gets to get a little bit more into the nuance, and this is just as far as I understand, and again, please correct me, I want to understand better, I want to be able to better understand the nuance of this, and because to me, District 6 is obviously gerrymandered. Now, I get that Louisiana is a strange shape of a state. And it's not going to be easy to split everything up into nice, even quadrants. And also, I know that the population is dispersed a little more unevenly. But District 6, in particular, in this image, seems like it is placed in a very strange way. And it is definitely one of those things that I don't think the ruling is necessarily unfair. I can understand the concerns that come along with it, because back in 2022, when the original map was overturned, and that then gave Black voters more power within the Congress and within their state to be able to make their voice heard a little bit better. So I understand that. I'm curious to see, and I need to look at a population map, and that's a whole lot more than I necessarily have time for in my day-to-day life. But if someone else has that and wants to show that to me, I would be, again, more than happy to look at that. But I feel like there's a way to better represent the total populace of Louisiana in a more fair and even way, and kind of get away with gerrymandering just as a whole. I think gerrymandering as a whole is a bad practice, and I think no matter how you slice it, gerrymandering is just a malicious practice that only serves to serve those in power. And I understand that there's a lot in this that are making people feel scared and making people feel nervous that they're going to completely lose, that their vote's going to lose their power in the state that it used to hold, even the past election here. It's me from the future. Additionally, I'm also optimistic, I'll say that loosely, with that this will push us as a country to get away from gerrymandering and get away from the practices that have got us to this point where we are worried about how our officials are going to separate us into groups in order to control our vote. And I think this is a very important moment for change, positive change in our nation as it currently stands. And that's not to say that I don't understand why people are feeling nervous about it, because a lot of things aren't necessarily going the way that people hoped, to put it very loosely. They're not feeling safe in their environments, they're not feeling safe in the way that they do things. And that sucks. And, I think this is definitely going to be a contributing factor of that. But I think this is an opportunity for some very positive change to see in our political landscape, and to see and to really push to move away from some of these practices that have gotten us, to this point. Now back to Past Me Now. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. This is everything that I can kind of pull up on the case without getting too in the nitty-gritty. If you have anything else to add, please let me know. I'm more than happy to talk and to learn. And there's a lot more to this, and I'm just one person. This is just my one thoughts on it, and I just want to know, what are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Until next time, catch you later. Goodbye.